Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're about to go on a massive 6,000-year historical deep dive into what is absolutely one of the most controversial yet endlessly versatile plants on the planet. We're going to trace its incredibly complex history, from being a total cornerstone of ancient agriculture to a global pariah, all the way to its current status as a modern medical marvel.
So let's kick things off with a little trivia, confronting a pretty huge knowledge gap about a plant that has drastically shifted its identity over millennia. Think about it. What single plant built ancient naval fleets, was aggressively banned on a global scale, and is now totally reshaping modern medicine? Yep, you guessed it. We're talking about cannabis.
All right, let's jump right into Act 1, the ancient versatile plant.
This whole story actually kicks off around 10,000 BCE with its domestication in Central and East Asia. From there, it's spread like wildfire to become a total global cornerstone of early human civilization. By 4800 BCE, the Yangshao culture in China was already using hemp quartz to pattern their pottery. Then, around 2700 BCE, its medical properties pop up in the Chinese pharmacopoeia attributed to Emperor Shennong. Nomadic groups, like the Scythians, then carried it over to the Middle East around 1500 BCE. And get this, its seeds even made their way into Viking ships by the 9th century.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, especially if you look at the etymology. The ancient Chinese character for hemp, ma, actually depicted two plants under a shelter. But here's the kicker. It also carried the meaning of numbness. This proves early humans perfectly understood the plant's dual nature. On one hand, you had this incredibly vital textile woven for everyday clothing and ropes, way before cotton was a thing. But on the other hand, that numbing effect clearly points to its early use as a medicine and an anesthetic.
So the key to understanding this whole crazy history is grasping this built-in biological duality. Because of this, populations historically cultivated two completely different branches of the same plant to serve totally different human needs. First, you've got industrial hemp, which is super low in the psychoactive compound THC. This was essentially your sturdy workhorse crop for textiles, robes, and early paper. And then you have psychoactive marijuana, which is high in THC, cultivated specifically for medical and spiritual reasons.
If we journey westward over to India, that high THC variant, locally known as Bhang or Ganja, took on a profoundly spiritual role. It became heavily tied to the Hindu god Shiva. For thousands of years, Hindu holy men and ascetic monks would consume it in food, drinks, or by smoking it, largely to ward off fatigue and basically unlock deeper states of religious meditation.
Which brings us to Act 2, Hero of the Great Voyages.
During the global age of discovery, from the 16th to the 19th centuries, the plant really entered its undisputed golden age. Massive naval fleets were dominating the oceans and driving global trade. But here's the thing. Without the unbelievable tensile strength of hemp fiber for sails, complex rigging, and those heavy-duty ropes, those ships literally could not have sailed. I mean, to put it in perspective, a single large vessel back then required dozens of tons of hemp.
Oh, and fun fact for you. Did you know the English word canvas, as in the very fabric those maritime sails were made of, originates directly from the word cannabis? It's a simple linguistic connection, but it forever cements the plant's legacy as an absolute game-changer in human maritime exploration.
But, of course, the golden age didn't last. Enter Act 3, Public Enemy at Rock Bottom.
So, how did our incredibly useful maritime heroes suddenly become a societal menace in the 20th century? Well, looking at the historical record, it was a perfect storm of societal and economic factors in the U.S. First, there were cultural tensions surrounding Mexican immigrants bringing their recreational marijuana customs with them. Add to that the sensationalized yellow journalism pushed by media giants like William Randolph Hearst, which really stoked public anxiety. You also had powerful financial groups looking to protect massive investments in the wood pulp paper industry from hemp competition. And tying the whole shebang together was Harry J. Anslinger, the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, who led these relentless anti-drug campaigns.
It's pretty wild when you look at it, because propaganda, rather than objective science, was really driving this aggressive legislative push in the 1930s. Anslinger heavily relied on what was called his Gore file. This was basically a collection of highly exaggerated stories of violence pulled directly from Hearst's newspapers, specifically designed to demonize the plant for the public and for lawmakers.
And that all culminated in 1937. That year marks the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act in the U.S. Now, they didn't outright ban the substance at first. Instead, the government slapped an impossibly heavy tax burden on it. This essentially criminalized its use, and tragically, it completely wiped out the innocent industrial hemp industry along with it, because farmers simply couldn't afford the taxes.
And it's fascinating, honestly, to watch how quickly this local U.S. policy snowballed into a sweeping, internationally coordinated war on drugs in just a few decades. It starts with those domestic laws in the 30s. Then, fast forward to 1961, the UN's Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs scales these restrictions up globally. And finally, the U.S. Controlled Substances Act in 1970 firmly cemented marijuana as a highly restricted substance.
All right, let's fast forward to our final chapter, Act 4, Modern Science and Reshaping.
In the late 20th century, scientists made a literal game-changing discovery that began to redeem the plant's reputation: the endocannabinoid system. This biological revelation proved that our human bodies are actually hardwired with specific receptors to process cannabis compounds. It was a monumental breakthrough because it finally provided the hard scientific explanation for why cannabis is so effective at treating things like pain, epilepsy, and inflammation. It basically validated centuries of ancient medical practice.
Armed with this rock-solid science, the tide really started to turn. Today, over 50 countries have legalized medical cannabis in some form. Even major global health authorities are completely changing their tune. The World Health Organization has officially recognized that CBD, which is a major component of cannabis, offers real medical benefits without the high. The World Anti-Doping Agency even took CBD off its banned substances list. But that leaves us where we are today, staring at a wildly complex global patchwork puzzle. We are quite literally living through a massive legal experiment. The legal status of cannabis ranges from extremely strict prohibition with severe penalties in some parts of the world, to full recreational legalization in places like Canada, right down to a super confusing state-by-state mix in the US. You can really see the cultural contrast in how different places are handling commercialization. On one side, you have these highly regulated, incredibly sleek, clinical-looking dispensaries popping up all over North America, treating it almost exactly like a modern pharmacy. And then, on the flip side, you have the famous Dutch model of tolerance, where traditional, cozy Amsterdam coffee shops have been operating in this sort of legal gray area for decades.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to really chew on. If a single plant can be an agricultural lifeline, a sacred ancient medicine, a targeted global crime, and now a cutting-edge scientific cure, what does that actually say about human history? Maybe our incredibly turbulent 6,000-year relationship with cannabis reveals a lot less about the plant itself and a whole lot more about the ever-shifting nature of human society, our politics, and our laws. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and remember to always keep questioning the history behind the headlines.